This is Peter,
And this is Tom.
and you're listening to History Teachers Talking Podcasts. All right, this is Peter Zablocki and Thomas Reska, and welcome back to our podcast. All right, Tom, what do we got?
Well, today we're going to be looking at the idea of everyone going west, right? That westward expansion, looking for seek out a better life, and we're going to be looking at one of the most infamous journeys that becomes known as the Donner Party, which basically they sent out going west, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong.
Yes.
Imagine playing that game, the Oregon Trail, but making every single wrong decision constantly in that
I
game.
love that game.
And that's pretty much what happened here.
Although I'll be honest with you, I would never survive. I mean, the Donner Party, obviously, wouldn't want to be part of that, and we'll discuss that today. However, I don't think I'll ever survive doing any of this stuff that these guys did. I mean, just overall moving west. Imagine taking everything you have putting it on a wagon and going out west where there's Native Americans that are trying to kill you. There are certain passages that have not yet been discovered, which we're going to talk about today.
Even the ones that you're going on are just dirt. They're not even dirt roads. They're like dirt paths. Like they're not roads or anything like that. And you're doing maps that were hastily put together, if they're even accurate and right. And if you calculated wrong, if you get hit with a snowstorm, if you didn't bring enough food, then you're done, and that's it.
Yeah.
If you get sick, forget about it.
And if you go with the Reed family or the Donner family, something worse might happen to you.
Well, if you follow someone, like what's the guy's name? Hastings, right? William Hastings.
Yeah, so let's do this. So we're talking about like 1840s. Actually, when this event takes place, the Mexican-American War, which we discussed in a podcast a few weeks ago, is concurrently happening. So the Mexican-American War is more or less happening around this time, or the end of it is happening around this time. And a lot of people are moving west. This is like the beginning of this manifest destiny and this idea of Western expansion. And
it's pre-gold rush, though. It's pre-gold rush, only by a couple years. Only by a couple years.
They're still going to California, though. There's ultimately what they're trying to do is they're trying to go to California and or Oregon. I mean, there's a few trails here, but obviously the most famous trail would be the Oregon Trail. When they kind of set off from Illinois, they go on the Oregon Trail and they eventually get to Fort Bridger. And that's when you kind of have a choice. You could continue on the Oregon Trail, which eventually will run into the California Trail. And then that will take you to Sutter's Fort, which would be the final destination in California. So you have the Donner family and then you have the Reed family. There's two different families that are involved here. The Donners is led actually by two brothers. They're fairly wealthy, Jacob and George Donner. They're immigrants. They initially followed the California Trail westward to Fort Bridger, Wyoming. And then from there, this is where it gets kind of murky and interesting.
Yeah,
right?
Well, because what happens is you have this man, like we said before, his name is Lansford Warren Hastings, and he has something that becomes known as the Hastings Cutoff. And it was a ill-advised shortcut, basically. And it's a real shortcut. It would cut off 300 miles from the journey. So it would work. But Hastings never actually did it himself. He just kind of found it on a map. And there were two individuals that actually did do it. And they came back and actually warned the people in the Donner Party, even said, listen, we just did it barely by foot. There's no way you're going to be able to get wagons. And there's no way you're going to be able to take women and children through this Hastings Cutoff.
Yep.
It's too dangerous. It's too slow. You're not going to be able to move fast enough. There's a wooded area. You have to go across a desert, like a salt desert from a dried out lake. It's just not a good idea. But the Donner and Reed's parties that really push for this, they really want to go and try this out because they want to get to California as quickly as possible because they're already backlogged.
They're running behind. Aren't they running behind? They were the back of that.
Yeah, at this time, you're supposed to leave in April. If you want to get to California, you want to leave by April, mid-April by the latest, because that's when wagons, they'll be avoiding the mud. The grass will still be high enough so you'll be able to feed the cattle and stuff like that. And they're actually leaving May 12th, which is not a good idea.
Yep.
Most other settlers would have backed away and
right?
said, forget it, we're not going anyway.
Exactly. Every day counts at that point. Like it's
Hours
very specific.
count, yeah.
Like you need to leave by this date in April. And actually in that April of 1846, almost 500 wagons left from Independence, Missouri, right, to go on this trek. And these guys were like the last ones. The Donner and Reed parties were the last party to join this movement, this Western expansion movement. And like you said, they kind of already left late. So When they make it to Fort Bridger, they're left with this choice. They could either continue on a already established trail, continue on the Oregon Trail, moving up further up west into Wyoming, Montana ish territory, and then get into the California Trail. However, what happens is, as you said, right? Hastings has this idea that, hey, I created or came up with this
He was like
shortcut.
a famous. He was kind of famous. He was a guidesman at the time.
He never even went
He
on
never
it.
did it. Yeah, he never did it himself. He
Yeah,
was he wrote a guidebook about how to get west, and he never did it himself. Now he does get involved in some of this. We'll talk about him. He does. The Donner Party actually meets up with him on a few
they
times,
do.
and they just keep on listening to him, which just gives them more misery. I don't know understand why. And another thing with this is again they're at that fort like you were talking about. People are telling them that they just took this Hastings Pass or took part of it, Hastings cut off, and they're like, "Do not do it.
Yeah, multiple times they're
It's
warned
not a good
against it.
idea." And he actually had some of these individuals by the name of Brian and one of the Reed brothers, a different Reed. They wrote all these letters. They actually went part of this Hastings cutoff. And they wrote all these letters, and they were sending them to the Donner Party, and they believe they got intercepted. I'm sure you read that by a man named Jim Bridger,
Yeah, who
and where
owned that fort?
yeah,
Yep,
well, he owned the trading post where the Donner Party was buying all their supplies. So, well, it was on a way to he owned the trading post. Excuse me, going towards the Hastings cutoff.
yep.
If you were going to go to the Hastings cutoff, you would buy your supplies then at this trading post at Bridger's trading post. So
Hmm.
they think he actually intercepted the letters and never gave them to the Donner Party. So they didn't even know because they think they probably would have listened to these individuals because they
Yep.
knew them a little bit more. It wasn't just like these random strangers saying like this is not a good idea. Remember, some of the early members of the Donner Party did not go up. Well, they just went to California the normal way. They followed the Oregon Trail, the more
Yep.
famous Oregon Trail. They didn't take the Hastings Cutoff. They were like, yeah, let's stick to the road, that we know.
As they get there, they find a letter that's like tucked in, and like it's actually like hanging on, I think, a stick or something. Like, hey, listen, don't even go this route yet. So I thought it was Hastings, but
Hastings, yeah,
Hastings.
Hastings,
So
yeah.
Hastings
He says it's too
here,
dangerous. It's too
yeah, he
impassable.
admits it. He's like, oh
He's
crap, like
admitting it's like this is not safe. There's no way you're going to get wagons through.
exactly. So he's saying, meet me here, and I will guide you through it. So this party waits another 8 days, and Hastings never
Yeah.
shows up. So it's like they waste another 8 days, and then they
Well,
finally
yeah.
send a scout out going forward to find Hastings, and they're like, all right, like what's going on now? Hastings tells them, listen, the original plan, you are already on my route, right, on my Hastings cutoff. Clearly, you could track back, which is going to take you you're going to lose probably another week or two, or you're going to keep on going forward, but don't go my original way. Go this way instead. He doesn't actually come back to lead them. He kind of just tells them,
He
try
tells
this
me, yeah,
other road.
try this way. Again, he's never done it. He's just saying go
Exactly.
this
Which
way,
is
and they
insane.
and they go with it. They trust him for whatever reason. This is one of those things that historians debate. They try to understand why did they keep on trusting him, because they only brought enough food for 4 months. And now
Yes.
they're kind of realizing they're not making good time because they spent those 8 days. Every day counts, and they're averaging because they're going through this area, and because they already got stuck in some rainstorms right by
Yep.
in Kansas, slowed them down. Also, they had to build rafts. Think about it, they had to build rafts, put supplies on rafts, and make it go across the river. Which a couple of people died doing that.
I just thought
So
I just keep on thinking of fording the river in Oregon Trail. I
I
played that
never
in
played
middle
that game.
school.
So
I remember still playing. It was fun stuff. But I mean, not in this case, obviously. We should also mention, I think we forgot to actually say the fact that there's about 81 people total. And out of those 81 people, more than half of them were younger than 18. They were kids.
there are a lot of kids. We'll get to
Yeah,
that.
like
There were a lot
literally
of
more
kids.
than half of that entire party of
Well, they're
86
they're
people
taking their entire
were kids.
families.
Yeah, and like six were infants. I mean,
Yeah.
this was like these were families in these wagons, as you said, that kind of thought they were going to save time by going in through this pass, and they clearly didn't. And they soon start kind of running out of food.
Well,
Sorry. So
again,
what
there's a
happened?
reason. If this is a shorter path, and people realize it was going to be shorter miles wise, like the shortest
Mhm.
distance, every point is a straight line. So they kind of realized that. But there's also got to be an idea why people didn't use it. Like they realize this is probably not the safest way. It's not going to be an easy way. All right. The Oregon Trail might be a little longer, but it's a little safer. And it wasn't safe at all. But compared to the Hastings cutoff, it was a lot easier. So they're trying to do this, and they're making very bad time. They're averaging about 1.5 miles a day
A
when they
day.
should be averaging at least 15,
Yep.
and
It's
they're only
insane.
averaging 1.5, if that, because they have to cut down trees and they get the wagons through. and the animals are getting stuck, or the animals don't want to go any further, and it's just becoming harder and harder and harder for them. And again, they don't really have any choice. They have to keep on going forward because they're reaching a point of basically no return. They're going to run out of provisions before anything else basically happens. And they keep on ignoring all of these signs that maybe they should turn back until basically they can't turn back
Too late.
anymore. Yeah.
Yep. So now it's by late August. They finally reached the mountains where they could look down at the Great Salt Lake. They kind of have doubts about this because they basically have to go across this Great Salt Lake desert.
It's a
And
desert.
there's a note that's left for them, because they did follow Hastings Pass. So there's Hastings leaves a note basically saying you have about 2 days ahead of you crossing this desert. There's no water. However, there will be water at the end, within like 48 hours. And that's a lie because it takes them like, what is it, like 10 days to cross
Well,
that,
again,
right?
and Hastings was able to cross it, but he was crossing it just him and a companion on a horse. That's the two of
Yeah.
them. That's a lot different than trying to pull a wagon train full of men and women and children and all supplies. They have cattle, they have mules, they have pack animals. They try to get all of those across. And there's actually reports of like Native Americans seeing this and being like, "What are these settlers doing?" Like just
Yeah.
laughing at them, saying they're going to try to cross this desert. There's no way they're going to be able to cross it in that. And it's one of the things too. They just didn't realize the threat of the natives because what the Native Americans were doing almost as like sport is they were just picking off their cattle on
Yep.
purpose.
They started taking it. Yep.
They would steal them in the middle of the night. They would just shoot and kill the cattle, and they were doing this on purpose because they realized that's just dwindling the number of their livestock as they're going through, and they never really woes up to really protect it in any way.
Yeah, so it essentially was supposed to be a 2-day journey that was going to supposedly take them 40 miles. And it took them like 80 miles to cross it. And believe it or not, no human lives were lost crossing it, but they lost most of their horses, their animals, their
Yeah, well, a lot of the oxes ran off,
wagons.
or
Oxen
the
just ran
oxes all
off.
ran off. Yeah, and you got to understand what that's going to do is it's just going to slow them down more because now they don't have the ox to pull the wagon. So how are they going to do this? They leave the wagons, but now the people are carrying all the supplies themselves.
Yep.
So they're actually strapped on huge backpacks, basically holding everything they can carry, plus the children still, and they're trying to just basically walk across this barren salt desert.
So finally, once they get past this Great Salt Lake, they finally rejoin the traditional trail. So they made it through Hastings Pass, right? But now they made it and rejoined this trail at such a late date. They are so behind where they're supposed to be with relation to winter coming, basically.
But basically, yeah, it's October, and then to make things worse, winter comes a little bit early that year
Yes, and it's
in the
supposedly one of the
Sierra Nevada mountains.
one of the worst winters ever for that
Yeah, it
time
was
period.
horrible. Yeah.
And as you also said, Native Americans are kind of joining them here and there, and they're stealing and shooting their oxen and horses. Like there's like things cannot go any worse. As they keep on going, the Donner Party kind of starts to splinter into different groups. Right. This is
Yeah.
where it
Well, I
gets.
think it's important to note too that before all that is that they literally missed this getting through the mountains pass by like a day or two. If
Yeah,
they weren't delayed just literally by like a day or two, they would have gotten through before the storm hit. And
and they
then
would have made it.
before it became too icy, and they would have been fine. You would have never heard the Donner Party would just be another footnote in history. Yes, some people died early on, but it wouldn't have been anything big. It's because of the fact that they got iced in, frozen in. They had to retreat to this nearby what was called Truckee Lake, and they had to wait for their winter to pass. And they built these ramshackle tents and cabins, and most of their supplies and livestock were already lost on that trail. Now, what were they going to do? What were they going to eat? They didn't have the food anymore, right? So a lot of
Yeah.
the settlers started to starve to death or perish from malnutrition. And like you said, they start to splinter off, and they're not really happy because now they're really starting to blame certain people for getting them into this mess.
Well, the first one to get banished is Reed, right? The father
Well,
of
yeah,
the Reed family.
but why
And
did
what
Reed get
happens?
banished?
Well, he gets banished because he gets into an argument with another guy, and eventually he shoots this other guy and
he
kills him.
stabs him. He stabs him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, shoot, stabs him. My bad. So
yeah,
he stabs him, kills him, and then idea is like, well, what do we do with this guy? He just killed somebody, and they decide as a camp they're going to banish Reed. So first of all, that turns out to be a good thing because Reed is banished and kind of sent forward, and he barely, but he does make it across to California, and he's one of the first rescue parties to come and
yeah.
get
He
them.
basically tells the people back in California that listen, we got to go help out this party that's stuck in the mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's one of the reasons. There's four relief efforts we'll get to, and he leads the first one. Yeah, He's what basically makes people know that who's stuck up there.
They also wind up at one point sending a couple guys ahead, and because they realize while they're getting through the Salt Lake and stuff that this is like not good. They do make it through.
Is that
The
the
problem,
Forlorn Hope or no?
yeah, no, not yet. The
Not yet.
Floating Hope is a little after.
That's a bit
These are
later.
the guys
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
kind of
yeah.
come in and give them some extra food and stuff, and they bring the
That's
two
right.
Native Americans with them.
Yes, that become
Um,
part of the Forlorn Hope
they
later on.
become part. They eventually do become part of the following, right? So let's All right, so let's get into that, I guess.
Well, like basically the winter's coming and it's getting bad. So like I said, they made a lot of food is getting very, very scarce. So
Yeah.
they start eating bark off of trees. They're boiling like their saddles and stuff like that. They're eating their pack animals.
They
Um,
ate their horse. I mean, they're dogs. They
their
literally.
dogs, yeah,
Yep.
and that. Surprisingly, there's still mules left, and even when everything's over, there's a few mules that survive. They just don't eat them,
That's so odd,
which
isn't it?
especially with getting what they do eat, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, a couple of these mules they just don't eat. But what they're doing is they're also taking off the shingles off their makeshift shacks that they made, which are kind of like leathery, and they're
Mhm.
boiling them and
Yeah.
and again like this like paste type of thing. And again, it's enough to barely survive on. And they're hunting too. They do kill some deers. They shoot and kill a bear at one point.
Yep.
So they are foraging off the land. It's just not enough, especially with all the calories that they burnt just to get there. Especially with just trying to stay warm and trying to stay alive. It's just not the nutrition that they need. They're not getting proper nutrition either. So then other diseases are going to set in. I
And we
mean, if
should
you get
also,
tuberculosis, you're done.
yeah, we should also say that like there's supposedly anywhere between 15 to 30-foot snowdrifts here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like
It's
there
a
are
horrible
times
winter.
they said
They
that
can't walk.
their entire cabin was covered in snow and they just wouldn't get out. For like a week at a time, they literally stayed in one cabin. Like they were unable to get out because there was like 15 to even 30 feet of snow. And there was technically two camps. We should say that because
Hmm.
Donners, as they're going up this hill, so basically what's happening is there's a big mountain in the Sierras and Sierra Nevadas, and they're making it up this mountain. And Donner, his something happens with his mule, right? His wagon breaks, so they wind up stopping. And the Reed family, along with the Breens, there's a couple other families there. They make it up, and they establish their camp closer to the lake, which now bears their name. It's known as Donner Lake. But Donner's camp is actually further down the trail, so they're not necessarily next to one another. Like these are technically two different camps that are semi close, but not like close enough considering the weather. And we know a lot about this due to the fact that a lot of these people ultimately they held, I mean, they kept diaries, right? I mean, a lot of the
Yeah.
kids
They
even
wrote
kept
stuff
diaries.
down. Yeah.
As you said, they're eating anything that they're eating. They start to even boil the. There's you probably read about this, right? They kept on boiling the bones of older animals
The,
over
yeah, the
and over
bones
and
around
over
over
again.
and over again just to get anything they could out of it. They
Yep.
were eating like they did kill some mules, and apparently, I guess mule meat's very tough, very disgusting. They're boiling their saddles, the shingles on their roofs, anything that was in some form organic. They're boiling and eating, and even that's not enough. And they are foraging; they're eating what they can find. But when you have 30-foot snow drifts, you're not finding much.
Yep. And the idea here is that they're just trying to survive enough for the winter to kind of pass them by. So that, again, they were only about 150 miles away from their destination. As you said, like another day, they would have made it over the hill. The point is to make it over this hill or these mountains, and then they would be a kind of on their way towards where they needed to go. But they just got stuck like up on that, like basically on the eastern side, but closer to the top of the mountain, which is insane. All right, so let's talk about this forlorn hope.
Well, there were other attempts to get out, right? You had like
Yeah.
Margaret Reed tried to tried to get out with some of, in some other ones, Virginia Melt, right?
Hmm.
Eliza Williams. Basically, these were a lot of the women. They were like, listen, they're watching their children starve to death. And they're saying it's going to be better to go out and try to bring food back than watch their children starve. So they left, and after 4 days, the snow was just too much. They had to come back, and they just basically all moved into one cabin and started eating the oxen root hides of the other cabins to survive. So
Yep.
that's basically what they did.
Hmm.
So they had to figure out something. Okay. So this group that later becomes known as the Forlorn Hope, it's a group of 17 men, women, and children. This shows how desperate they were. That women and children were also sent out during this. The youngest one was actually William Murphy. He was 10 years old.
Yep.
He's actually going out on this.
And they
And
created these like snowshoes, right? They like made
snowshoes that were not easy. It was hard to walk on the snow, but it allowed them to actually do it.
walk. Yeah,
So they were able actually to try to get through this mountain pass. Okay. And a lot of these men were fathers. The women were actually left their children with other women just to so they could try to get out. They packed lightly, taking just a few, like what I think was 6 days worth of rations,
hmm
some a blanket that they had, some pistols and stuff, and they head out. And as they're going, it wasn't an easy climb. Things are getting worse and worse, and they're all malnourished anyway. The snow was at least 12 feet deep,
yeah.
and
And
by the third
this is where it gets kind of like
this is when it gets bad because
yeah,
by the third day, most of them went snowblind. Basically, the sun bouncing off. They didn't have or didn't think to make like sunglasses or
yeah. This
sun
is
visors,
1840s.
snow
Yeah,
visors. Yeah, so they couldn't see. They are basically when you go outside, a snowy day when it's sunny, the sunlight just bounces off the snow. It can blind you. So and that's what basically happened to them. So a lot of them starts to a few of them head back. That like 10-year-old
yeah,
boy. William Murphy, he heads back. A lot of the other younger ones start to turn back. So a lot of them do actually turn back. I believe like another like 9 or so decide to keep on going.
yeah.
And
I thought it was like, well, I think nine make it. I think there is ultimately like
it's like 11 or 12
12
actually
or
keep on
11.
going.
Yeah,
Yeah, they keep on going, and they're pushing it and they're pushing it. And what's happening is on the sixth day, one of them starts to get very tired and they're becoming lost, they're becoming confused. And after 2 more days without food, one of them, by the name of Patrick Dolan, proposed that one of them should volunteer to die in order for the other ones to feed off of them. And this was something that, if you read the diaries, that some of them they talk about earlier on, that this was things that people started to bring up. Like
yep,
what's going to happen? What should we do with the guy that died? What should we do with his body? Or when this person dies, what should we do? They're reasoning that might be something that happens because again, they're just starving. They don't have they're just malnourished. They have nothing left. So
yeah.
they're seeing
We should just
people.
remind the listeners that this is not the main party. This is just like the guys
No,
that are going to get help. Right.
exactly.
That's really where cannibalism starts. It doesn't actually
Yeah.
start in the
It,
main
it start it's yeah, it doesn't
campus.
start the camp yet. They don't have a lot of food, but they have enough to if they ration it and they're eating like their
Yeah.
roofs and like we said, so they're surviving. This is the ones who are out basically with nothing else. They don't even have the oxhide roofs to do
hmm
that. So they're trying to come up with some ways to do that. They're suggesting a duel, maybe a lottery to choose which member to sacrifice. So eventually they say, all right, let's just keep on moving, and then we'll see what happens. Okay. So there was this one man by the name of Antonio. He didn't have a family. He was more of he was an animal herder. He was
hmm
the first to die, and then a man by the name of Franklin Graves dies next. And as the blizzard progressed, Dolan, who started to go insane, right? He stripped off his clothes. He ran into the woods. They say that's something very common when people get like hypothermia. They actually get really hot, so they'll like strip off their clothes and they'll run around. And he returns shortly afterwards and just drops dead a few hours later. Um, and another man by the name of Murphy was near death, so they decided, you know what? Dolan was the one that offered that if he dies first, you can feed him my corpse. He's the one that came up with the idea. So they start to eat the flesh from Dolan's body.
Yeah.
Um,
And then they actually like afterwards they in order to store some of the flesh for days, they started drying. They literally started cutting pieces of
yeah,
him
well, yeah,
and these bodies, and they started drying them to kind of make sure they could eat it on the way
and
back.
not all of them from this party ate it either. That guy we talked about before, Eddie, he
Yep.
refused to eat it. William Eddie, he
Yep.
refused to eat it. And then you had these two other men by the name of Salvador, and Luis. They refused to eat it too. They are actually Native American guides. Or
Yep.
they joined the party halfway up the mountain,
Yeah, those are the
basically.
guys that were brought back when
Yeah,
yeah, they went
they
forward.
they refused to eat it too. So the next morning, like you said, they're stripping the muscle and the organs from the bodies of the other men, Antonio, Dolan, Graves, and Murphy. They're drying them out so they can store them. And they set off again. And eventually they start to, Eddie does eventually eat. He succumbs to hunger. And they were saying they can just eat this. So he ate it too because he was basically going to die if he didn't.
Yep.
And they eventually had to eat their snowshoes. So the only thing that was allowed, the webbing of their snowshoes. And
Yep.
that's when they're like, all right, well, we're off. We know each other, right? Some of the other survivors. And that's when the idea of maybe we should kill Lewis and Salvador, right? These two
Native Americans.
people that they don't really know. They don't know them. They're just people that are on this trip with them. They don't have families that they know of. So like maybe we shoot and kill them and then use them for food. So William Eddy, who was very against a lot of this, he warned the two men, and they left that night.
Yeah.
They ran off, but we'll get back to them. And then what's basically going on here is that there's 7 members left, and they're just trying to figure out something what to do. So William Eddy and Mary Graves, they decide to go off on a hunt, and they actually come back with deer meat. But when
Yeah.
they come back, a man died the night before, Jay Fostick. He dies, and they're already cutting his body apart. Basically, the idea was once you make that decision, once you cross that taboo line, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
then you just start seeing people as food as in this state when you're just starved. And so, someone dies, that's it. They're not killing anybody at this moment, but they will eat. If you die, they're going to eat you. They're going to
Yep.
use your body. Your body then becomes food.
Yep.
And what was very disturbing is this happens a bit more later on. We'll talk about it. They actually had people taking great care that you would not eat your own family member.
Yeah, I was gonna
Like
say that before.
that's
They
what
were
that's
very much like, okay, can't eat this arm because that was like your daughter. I mean,
this
that's
is
really how bad it
literally
gets.
literally they were also, well, I mean, morbid stuff, but there were infants that were also consumed.
Most of them survive, and they say
Yeah,
that
we'll
the
get to that. Yeah.
small group of them stumbles into like a Native American settlement, and they look so bad that initially the Native Americans actually freak out and run
They
away.
run
They're
out.
like,
Yeah, they run out.
There's like
But
half dead
before all
people just
that,
got
yeah,
here."
we got to make sure we say that. But before all that, those two people that ran off, right,
Oh well, yeah, they were
Salvador and
found.
Lewis, they get found like malnourished. So they shoot them.
They shoot him and eat
William
him.
Foster actually shoots them in the head and then eats them. They're actually, they're shot and then consumed, and then they wind up stumbling to that Native American settlement, and they're scary because they're so basically
They looked so malnourished and
deteriorate. Yeah,
everything.
and
Yeah.
they feed them some acorns, pine nuts, and things like that.
Yep.
And they continue on with the help of the tribesmen. They reach a small ranch, farming community in the Sacramento Valley, and that's when they start to assemble a rescue party for the other 6 survivors of the Forlorn Hope. And their journey from the lake
It's like
to this
33 days,
was
right?
33 days
Yep.
long. So they spent 33 days basically just in the wild, in the woods, in the
Yep.
snowstorm,
And like eating people to try
eating
to
each
make
other.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, which is
yeah,
insane. And that's where you get into like the relief, the rescues. There's technically 3 or 4 rescue attempts. The first one starts with Reed. I mean, the one that was banished initially.
yeah. Well,
He
he wanted to get
really,
back to his family.
yeah, he wants to get back to his kids and his wife, and he tries. And they said that he makes it um, up to the mountaintop almost, but he's still on the western side. And they said if he was like maybe a few hours away from crossing over and finding the camp, but the weather was just so bad that he's got to go back. So he goes back. Um, and then when he gets back, by then he kind of runs into William Eddy because they've been saved already. This Forlorn Hope party saved, so they kind of give him some hints as to where to look and what to do. And that's when you start this other rescue party. Again, the problem with these rescue parties is that the weather is still not good. So not only is the weather not good, but the passage is not good itself, which means that they can't really bring wagons. So the rescue parties have to go very much in small. They're very small rescue parties, and what they
Yeah,
do is as they're going towards the Reed and Donner parties, they are basically hunting and they're hiding this food from these animals. They're hiding, hunting rather, for their way back. They like hide them and put stone and rocks over them so that way they have food on their way back. And as they keep on going and going and going, they barely make it to these camps. And then they
it's
finally
not easy.
the
It's not
first
easy.
party finally makes it to the camp, and first of all, they don't have much food left either. And whatever the food they do give to some of these kids and families, they're like, don't eat too much because like we don't want you to die because you haven't eaten for so long. And they're
That's a big
only
thing. Yeah.
able to rescue a few people. They're like, we
That's
can
the thing.
only
It's not like, yeah, it's not like it's an instant rescue party. The rescue
no.
process takes over 2 months to
Yep.
actually happen because there is just, and some of them are pretty interesting. We'll talk about some of the individual ones because during this time, people are still dying. Like it's not like they know rescue's coming, but like you said, Pete, there's no way to get massive amounts of aid to these people or get all these people out right away. It's still the middle of winter. So, and it's a mountain pass. So it's not easy. So as they are rescuing people and they are rescuing people, others are dying in between. So some are actually dying on the route itself. Um, Isaac Donner is one of them, right? He's one of the young
Yep.
sons. He actually dies from later on. I think the second relief. But in the first relief, they're getting people out, but they're not surviving.
Not at that
Not
speed.
not everyone. Not everyone.
Yep. And
It's
also
too hard.
what kind of sucked too is that as they were making it back down the mountain with having rescued some of these people, they realized that the food that they hunted for and hid on the way up was taken by animals, like wolves and stuff
Yeah.
came in and
All right, they're gonna
stole it.
find it. Yeah, they're gonna
So now
find it.
they're
Yeah.
back to starvation. Even the actual rescue party and the relief parties in starvation mode to try to make it back. The second relief party, that
This
one's
is when
kind
the
of,
things start to get a little
yeah, like kind of
rough.
freaky.
Yeah.
Like at one point they get to the Cree camp. The relief party makes it reaches this one particular cabin, and they literally see one of the people carrying a human leg, and then like
Yeah.
he sees them, and so he like throws it, in this hole in the snow. In that hole in the snow is basically this dismembered body of Jacob Donner. So this guy didn't want to be caught like just carrying a human leg into the cabin that he was about to consume. And inside, in a second relief party, they find Elizabeth Donner, who is near starvation because she refuses to eat her husband, um, but she's feeding her children, the father's organs. I mean, the
Yeah. So
children
they
are
can
surviving
survive
by eating their
by eating
father,
her father's own organs. Yeah.
right? And by then, they're saying that the rescuers that come in at the second relief party, they find three other bodies in the Donner camp cabin that are already pretty much consumed. They just find remnants of three other bodies. Um, so, like, it's very evident that during this time, as these rescue parties are leaving and coming back, the Donner party that stayed behind is starting to literally live off of bodies. I mean, they're eating dead bodies.
What's also interesting about this, this is in the second relief, I believe it was.
Yep.
You had a man by the name of John Stark. I think I'm sure you saw him, right?
Yep.
And he really becomes kind of like famous in this. There's a lot of like bad people make bad decisions. He's actually one of these guys. He goes up and he's one of these mountain men, right? And he comes in and he wants to. His whole thing is he gets there and he sees all these men are perishing and stuff like that, and people are trying to like pay them here, take me down, stuff like that. He's like, listen, he basically said, I'm getting the kids out of here. He refuses to leave any children behind. So what he does is he's going like up and down. He winds up getting 9 children himself out
Hmm.
of this time, 11 total, but 9 children. And he goes up and down. He's actually carrying them underneath his arms, on his shoulders, and he'll walk a couple yards, put them down, go back up, get the other ones, and walk then down a couple yards. He's just going back and forth. He's continuing this grueling process all the way down the mountain, and he eventually led all 9 of the children out. And years later, one of the survivors credited her rescue to him, saying, "Nobody but God and Stark and the Virgin Mary helped me survive this."
Yep.
And so
Insane.
what's interesting about the third relief is some of the people who joined up the third relief were a little, how can I say this in a nice way? They weren't exactly of great moral caliber. I'm sure you
Hmm.
saw that.
Yep.
They were individuals basically saying, listen, you come up and help us get the rest of these people out, because it wasn't an easy trip to do.
Yep.
A lot of these people died. And you can take whatever belongings is still there. Remember, these people brought their life savings. There's money, there's gold, there's jewelry. So
Yep.
they're saying that you can take whatever there if the person's dead, if you help
Yep.
get the survivors out. So a lot of these people joined up to do this, and they start going up, and that's when they find some of the young Donner girls,
Yep.
Elizabeth, Georgia, and Frances, 3, 4, and 6. They find them here during the this third relief,
Yep.
and these parties go up, and this is when they also run into Klessenberg.
Kes-
I'm sure you
yeah, Kessenberg. I mean,
Kesberg.
this is
So
like
what happened with
this
him?
is
Yeah, this is what really creates the whole cannibalism
Yeah, I mean,
story. This
so they
this
walk in.
this is when people get.
Yeah, like Kessenberg. The way they find him is they basically walk into one of the cabins. Right, try to imagine this. They walk into one of these cabins, and it's like pitch dark in there with a little fire. It is just illuminated by a little fire, and on the ground is this old man Kessenberg. He's surrounded by parts, like body parts. There's blood everywhere. He is dirty and bloody, and he's like sitting in a corner. Think of like my precious, kind of like Lord of the Rings,
Yeah,
style. Um, and he's got guns near him, he's got jewelry collected from all these people, but he's living inside this like just cabin full of mutilated, half-eaten bodies. I mean,
yeah, and they found a pot full of boiling human flesh in his
yeah,
cabin.
like he was nuts, and he was like
Money, he had two
talking
hundred
crazy
seventy three
stuff,
dollars.
and
Yeah,
yeah, he was definitely he was the last member of the Donner Party to ultimately make it out of there altogether, and
and they
they said
almost
he
killed
was the
him.
craziest one.
Yeah, and the people wanted the salvage part of that came in. They wanted to kill him. They wanted to
Yeah,
hang him upright, hang him, because they're like, no, he definitely killed the Don Mrs. Murphy. They believe he
yep,
killed Tamsin Donner. He believed that they believed that they killed him.
No,
He said
he's the one that went
they
crazy at the
died of
end.
natural causes, but everyone thinks, or they at least thought, that he killed them. Yeah,
Yep. He was the last one that basically said, you know what, I'm gonna survive by basically killing whoever's left and eating them, and he does that, and he is the last one to survive. As crazy as that sounds, so he does get out of there, and then the news of Donner Party kind of spreads fairly quickly, and initially, um, it does slow down a little bit because the ordeal, the ordeals and the cannibalism aspect really does get out into the papers,
I guess we have
especially
to
after
say out of the
finding,
87, right? Only 48 survived. So
yeah.
that just so you get that, so 48 survivors do get out. They survive, and then yeah, like you said, it starts to go into the papers and stuff.
And actually,
Because a lot of
mostly,
these children a lot of these children are orphaned. Their
yeah,
parents
I was just
are
going to say
died.
most of the people that do survive are children,
Are
and
children,
they
yeah.
are orphaned. But the problem is that some of them do wind up getting adopted, but then people start to kind of, in today's terms, bully them because they're like, well, they're cannibals, and they start treating them like, well, these kids ate people, and they're kind of branded as that, and they have kind of terrible lives going forward because people known them as cannibals, even though they were kids. And granted, yes, highly likely most of those kids did eat organs of people, but they were fed to them when they were like 4 years old. I mean, what do you do at 4 years old? You're hungry, right? Not that
Yeah,
that's okay. Just throwing that out there by any means. So the expeditions overall decrease after this. In the few first years, people are like, numbers dropped. Like maybe we're gonna just kind of chill. But historians believe that it was probably because the ongoing Mexican American War, more so than like the cautionary tale of the Donner Party. And obviously, by the time in '49, when gold's discovered, forget it. We're willing
it
to
was a
risk it.
risk. It was a risk they were going to take. Yeah,
Yeah, we're willing to risk it. But you're right. Yeah, 48 of them survived out of 87. It was like between 81 to 87. Once you start adding people that kind of were added to that party as they kept on going. But the last one I think actually passed away during the Great Depression, 1935, and this is happening
35.
in
Yeah. But
1840.
there were a
So
couple that had some really tough times. Like Nancy Graves was one of them. She was only 9 years old, and they said that she just never, like, historians always try to contact her, like,
yeah,
interesting, we want to record your story, give us an account of the events. And they said, like, she never recovered from it. And she actually cannibalized her own brother and mother to survive. And they said she just never was able to bounce back from that. And like, who would? A lot of the other ones, some other ones start other families. That Kissenberg guy, he actually brought a lawsuit against several members of the Leaf Party who accused him of murdering Donner,
yep.
Tamsin Donner. And the court actually awarded him damages in the form of $1. But he had to
Wow.
pay. He had to pay the court costs. So they kind of, like, they didn't like him either. So he came out with a lot of these stories and stuff like that. But again,
And
they kind of
it's
conclude
almost
that
asked the
whether he was
question.
innocent or not.
You asked the question like, what would you do? I mean, when these guys started this, right? Initially, again, they killed off their oxen, horses, everything that they could eat meat. Then they
But two
boiled the
mules
hide.
survived. Two
Yeah,
mules did
which is
survive.
kind of odd. I find that so odd.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
understand that either.
right? They boil hides. They pick up bone marrow. They actually made this like disgusting goo from the hides, right? And it had a very
Yeah.
little, if any, nutritional value. Then they found mice, believe it or not, that were trying to get into the warm cabin. So they
Yes, that's right.
ate field mice that they caught in these cabins. They finally got to the point where they had to kill all the beloved dogs because they actually brought a lot of dogs to them. After the dogs, they killed them and ate them. Then they started chewing on pine cones, pine bark, and then they're freezing, starving, and they start becoming delirious. I mean, that's ultimately what starts to happen. And then they had something to chew on, so they started chewing on anything they could find, right? And as people are dying, dead companions and friends, family, at that point, it didn't really matter when you're dying from starvation. Um, I guess that is the last resort, right? But then again, it would be the last resort because you're dying after that. But also, we should say that a lot of them did try their best not to consume flesh.
It wasn't everybody. Not all of
Yeah,
them. Not all survivors did consume. Most of the ones that consumed it, they said, were probably the children that were fed it by the adults to keep them going. And they actually found in Alder Creek, which is right by where this was. They found a bunch of bones, and there was no evidence of cannibalism on the bones. So this
yeah.
was definitely people who died there. So and it's just
Well,
different. The different camps too. There was different levels of what was going on.
exactly. And I was going to go to that because, you're trying to put yourself in the shoes. Like, what would you do in their situation, right? I mean, cannibalism, how awful, right? But, like, What would you do if your children are starving to death, freezing to death? Like it's such a. I mean, I could never imagine. I keep on thinking of like, that movie Clarice. Remember with Silence of the Lambs and all that. But like the Reed family, they survived. The entire family, the
Entire
entire
family
Reed
survived.
family,
Yeah, he actually
survived.
came back and rescued his family, all his kids. Yeah.
Yeah, and all yeah, since he rescued his entire family and kids, and they those that survived, they wind up not eating any human flesh. So it was possible, to survive this without having to eat flesh. I mean, obviously not for everybody else, but I guess it was possible. So what can we learn from the Donner Party today? I mean,
Well,
it is still a
basically,
topic.
it's
Go
hard
ahead.
decisions. Like I don't think what they did was you can look at it and say what they did was neither a villain like a horrible act or a heroic act. It was just they had to act to survive.
Yeah,
So that's not wasn't necessarily the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do. They just did what they needed to survive, and then people are going to judge them for it. And again, it wasn't everybody, and it's also the dispute about how much who was really doing the cannibalism, why it was doing it. They did kill those two Indians just to eat them, but that was part of the forlorn hope. That's really the one that starts it all.
yep,
So, but again, it's just one of those stories, and it just shows you how difficult these people basically were looking to have like their American dream, right? And they just had a complete nightmare, the ultimate nightmare instead.
yep. I think a good way to kind of finish this too is looking at a letter that was written by Patty Reed. She wrote this to her cousin after she was rescued. Patty Reed was one of the kids, and the quote that kind of really resonates with me. I think it's a good way to finish this. She said in this letter, "We have left everything, but I don't care for that. We have got through with our lives. Don't let this letter dishearten anybody. Remember, never take no cut-offs and hurry along as fast as you can." I mean, ultimately, ignorance, right, and arrogance. I mean, these guys would try to. They. The idea is like they're trying to cut corners. It's like your parents always tell you that when you're little. Like my dad always said, "Don't cut corners. Do it right. Do it twice."
Or
You know?
what's the old Carpenter thing, right? Like measure twice, cut once.
Yeah. Right.
Right? So it's like that because if they didn't, first of all, they should have never have gone. Hindsight
Period.
2020 in May, you just
Yeah.
don't do it. Everyone was like, well, it's kind of late to begin with. Then once they got delayed in Kansas, and once they got delayed another 8 days looking for Hastings, whatever,
Yeah.
that's it. Like there's no way to keep on going. And then they were just literally a day or two, if that, if it was even that long, from just getting across that mountain pass. So he said 150 miles away, which is a long distance, but they get through that mountain pass. They're not stuck. They're not snowed in. There's no 30 foot snowdrifts and stuff like that. They can get out and then they're in California. That's it. So it was just like everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Donner Party.
One last thing before we finish. Did you know that James Reed, right, being the interesting character here, he's the guy that gets banished. He's the guy that comes back for his family. It's kind of like the good feel good story here. Um, so I don't know if you knew this, but he had a business in Illinois, in Springfield, and he actually was helped out in his business by a young guy, a young lawyer, lawyer named Abe Lincoln, and they became really good friends, James Reed and Abe Lincoln, and they were messmates in the Black Hawk War, and became really good friends. And when Reed eventually declares bankruptcy from his business and sets out on a trail to kind of rebuild his life, going to California, he discusses this with his friend Lincoln, and Lincoln is very interested in going. Um, with the Donner Party, I mean, Abe Lincoln could have
Yeah.
been part of the
Yeah.
Donner Party.
Who
Like
knows what
that
would have
is
happened? Yeah.
insane. And it said that he might have signed up, but he had a very driven and very intense wife, Mary. And Mary was like, you know what? I have family members in California, and they kind of gone out in early wagon trains. Um, and she already had a toddler son, and she was pregnant. She's like, I'm hearing nothing great over there. And she's the one that convinced Lincoln not to join the Donner Party. How different would history have been? That's nuts.
If he
Nuts.
goes there, yeah, that changes a lot of things.
Yeah, for sure.
One would think. One would think.
Right. All right. So, I guess that concludes our podcast on the Donner Party. Again, you guys could watch documentaries. There's movies made.
Some documentaries.
Well,
There's a whole bunch of memorials at the Hastings cutoff in around. They have
yes.
Donner Lake, like you mentioned before. They have a lot of memorials. One of them is actually a giant rock that was they
It
believe
was
was
used as
actually
the fireplace, right, or
as a
something like that.
fireplace in some of the houses,
Yeah.
one of the cabins. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of history about this. There's movies, documentaries, books, you name it. This is one of those things that's always going to be talked about.
Yeah, so if you guys are interested in any of it, please, yeah, go ahead. Again, this is just a nice short conversation to get spark some of your interest here. So as always, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in and listening to us every week. We greatly appreciate it, and we are always open to suggestions. You got anything else, Tom? No, I
No,
think
that's it. Just we like to, any feedback that you might have, and we appreciate you listening.
awesome. All right, take care, everyone.
Stay safe.
I hope everyone enjoyed our podcast, and if you would like to email us, you can do so at historyteacherspodcast@gmail.com.